What's up, Klamath Falls? This is Dave.
Hey, what's up, Klamath Falls? This is Mike, and we've got a special guest today. And fortunately, he showed up in a good mood because after the podcast where I threw him under the bus, I wasn't sure what to expect. But Ryan Kliewer is joining us today, and he is involved with the. So, what is the official title, Ryan?
The district is Klamath Basin Improvement District.
Okay,
So
and you're
I am the president of the board of directors.
president of the board of directors.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, thank you for coming out.
My privilege.
I kind of explained to you before we got the cameras turned on that it was nothing. How do I want to put it?
It wasn't
personal
malicious.
towards you.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It is out of concern for our farmers and for the basin as
For
a
sure.
whole. And unfortunately, I suppose your name was on the letter that I got a copy of. So that's where we headed down the path. So I'd love to give you an opportunity to clear things up for myself and for folks that watch the show.
For sure. So the letter that you read was just a general letter kind of notifying the patrons of the Klamath Basin Improvement District and potentially other Warren Act district contractors that the Bureau of Reclamation is putting out its new proposed action in concurrence with the Endangered Species Act and its requirements. There's a new biological opinion coming out pertaining to the endangered species in Upper Klamath Lake and threatening species downstream. And it is going to significantly change how water is allocated to the basin. And that with the forecasts that have been taking place kind of concurrent to the past years and inflows and outflows and everything, that it looks like there's not going to be much and sometimes if any water for the Warren Act districts especially. So that was what that letter was intended for. And so maybe I wrote it poorly. I don't know to not completely describe it. If so, that's my fault. But that was the intent.
That is, I might not have fully understood it, how it was directed. So the Warren Act land, is that like what they refer to as the leases?
No. So the way that it works is you have like Klamath Irrigation District, KID, is considered an A contract through Bureau of Reclamation. Same with Van Brimmer Ditch Company, Tule Lake Irrigation District. Those are the primary A diverting contracts. And then those were kind of established, like KID, Van Brimmer and everything was based on the 1905 contract that started the irrigation district. And then later on in time, when electrical power started becoming more available in the Klamath Basin, you could pump that water uphill. And so that's typically what is referred to as the Warren Act districts, is anything that's generically above the ditch level. And I mean, Enterprise Irrigation District, their contract dates back, I think it's either 1911 or 1913. And then the development of the project and how the districts were associated it's quite a tapestry of history that we can go into if you would like.
Maybe.
Okay, fair enough.
So the B and C, is that a geographic area specifically, or is it just random folks here
It's
and there
just
and how they fall in?
there was a bunch of individual Warren Act contracts that were established, private individuals with reclamation, and some of them associated together into operating districts. There's still a bunch of individual Warren Act contracts out there that don't have representation. And so depending on where you're at, like Enterprise is pretty much north of the A Canal, clear from Foothills all the way over to about Vale Road going east on Highway 140. And then off to the east of them is Pine Grove Irrigation District. And so those are both as well Warren Act districts. And so it just depends on where you are and how your land was adopted into the irrigation project.
How does this affect the Tule Lake recreation area then?
It's going to probably likely have an adverse impact. The thing that is difficult is you have refuges are still under the same water right with the state, because there's a difference between Bureau of Reclamation contracts and the state water right. So it was in the 1970s, the irrigation districts petitioned the state for a certificate of water right. And so there's a long discovery phase essentially. And finally in 2013, we got the final order of determination, which is an enforceable water right. The tribes were granted water rights to the tributaries and to certain portions of Upper Klamath Lake. And the Bureau of Reclamation was granted the storage right to Upper Klamath Lake. And then the actual beneficial use rights were established as a 1905 dated right for the balance of the project. So the water rights and the contracts are two completely different things.
Okay.
If that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah. Yes and no.
Fair enough.
So with the Endangered Species Act, if they get that, and I'm guessing they're probably going to win.
Well, we've been under the implications of the Endangered Species Act for quite some time. The suckerfish in Upper Klamath Lake, best I recall, were listed under the ESA in 1986, and then the first curtailment, I guess you would say, was actually clear back in 1992. It was a really, really dry year in 1992, and so they limited diversions for the tail end of 1992, and then things went fairly well until 2001. There was some changes to the science, and they said that to have a continued existence of the species, that they needed the Upper Klamath Lake to hit full pool. So full operating pool is 4,143 feet above sea level. Full pool is 4143.3. So I don't know if you guys remember when it backed across Highway 140, because they kept the lake elevation so high, it blew out the infrastructure alongside Highway 140 and flooded those fields. So there was a little bit of catastrophe that went along with that. But after 2001, and Gail Norton, then Secretary of Interior Gail Norton, stepped in and got a little bit of a late allocation of water for the project. And then we had pretty decent years precipitation wise. And then over the last 4 or 5 years, we've really seen the precipitation values, and not so much just precipitation, but the inflows to Upper Klamath Lake have been falling off. And so there's a lot of kind of questions and speculations as to why that's happening, but we just aren't having as they call them, accretions into Upper Klamath Lake. And so that's created shortages of water.
Even when we have above normal snowfall, we're still not getting that inflow like we should.
Correct. So like Williamson River is a good pretty much indicator about how much water's coming in. Just the flow gauges there. You can watch the Wood River, the Sprague, and kind of see what's coming in from different reaches. But even though, on above normal precipitation years, we're still not seeing those accretions reaching Upper Klamath Lake. And so there's like I said, there's a lot of questions and speculations as to why that is.
So they do all flow into Klamath, like you just said, the Sprague and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have another one. I don't know if you saw the Chiloquin. The feds are wanting flood area put on around that.
The Barnes Agency reconnection.
Yeah, on this, I think that was on the Sprague River. They
Right.
were wanting to
Right.
reclassify. We've got friends that have a horse ranch out there, but they're wanting to reclassify that as a flood area now.
Oh.
And you're not getting the regular inflow even as it is from the
Right.
river.
So what
Right.
you just said, it makes no sense. In one area we're low, but
Right.
yet they're flooding out this way.
Redistricting it as a flood zone. So
Well,
Does that make sense? Do you know about that, or?
I'm not so familiar with that one. I know that there's a big push to reconnect the Barnes Agency ranches as wetlands to essentially Upper Klamath Lake, and there's been a lot of push to do that for essentially habitat restoration. But as far as the Sprague River and the tributaries, a lot of people don't remember the 1964 flood. U.S. Army Corps of Engineers came in and did a bunch of channelization to try and expedite water through those reaches and get it to Upper Klamath Lake. and essentially alleviate the flood,
Right.
of that liability. I mean, typically we always considered that floods are a catastrophe. And then, but you look also at the same point in time, there's actually a water right for the tributaries for keeping the river above a certain point if they feel that the riparian restoration is a part of that. And so that was actually a granted water right. They can shut off irrigations to make the river necessarily go higher.
So has anybody actually traveled the rivers to look for diversion or if anything's going on there? Or
There's as far as the project is concerned, in my participation, there's not really a lot of boots on the ground out there, so to speak.
okay.
Pretty much it's just watching the stream flow gauges and trying to see what's coming from where, and then watching the snow-tell sites and see what precipitation is where. And, it would be nice if there was more soil moisture monitors out and abroad with the snow-tell sites, because then you could actually tell how much moisture might actually be getting to come down.
Yeah.
So
I would assume like after a drought year or a couple of drought years, even with above normal runoff, you're going to get some excessive absorption, at least for a while.
you would hope, but
Really.
I was watching, actually I was at a meeting with one of the biologists from the refuge, and I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, John Vradenberg or Brandenburg. Sorry, John. So anyways, he did a really nice presentation talking about kind of the augmentations of hydrology that we've done in the basin, because you have to remember Lower Klamath Lake was a lake, Tule Lake was a lake. And, throughout, before the implications of the ESA, there was a lot of water that went to Tule Lake, went through deep, was pumped through D plant back over to Lower Klamath Lake, and then ultimately it was returned to the river. But when you take all that land that was a sponge, essentially, it's peat dirt. So its soil moisture capacity per foot of soil is about 4 times what the loamy soils in the upper part of the basin here are. And so when you start depleting that amount of water out of the ground, it necessarily takes that much more to keep it rehydrated. And so bringing the water table up and maintaining that, if you have that sponge wet and you get precipitation on it, it's going to create runoff.
Yeah.
But we've kind of depleted the hydrology of the basin for so many years because of the ESA implications, and kind of seeing the forecast of what the proposed action is from reclamation. We're not likely soon to get that back.
So it sounds like the ESA is kind of having the reverse effect that it's intended to have. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's a federal thing.
Yep.
So I'm not surprised at all.
Be careful.
Our government works.
Be
right?
careful what you wish for.
So I guess part of my confusion there is it said the reclamation had a 5-year plan. It went into effect October 1st.
Yeah, so that's typically, as I'm aware,
Fiscal year.
no, it's actually the duration of like the longevity of the biological opinion.
Okay.
And so what the proposed action is of reclamation, they have to develop an action because they are considered an action agency of the federal government. And so to comply with ESA, they have to develop an action, and then they have to solicit it to the sister agencies of National Marine Fisheries Service, Fish and Wildlife, so on and so forth, and get responses to it. And then the analysis is done based on whether they think it will cause a likely jeopardy to the continued existence of species. And so then Bureau of Reclamation is by right supposed to modify their action and then solicit it for public comment before ultimately going ahead and moving forward with that action.
Huh. Okay. I had a question there and then I lost it real quick, but
So are there going to be, I guess, meetings or hearings or?
They've already been taking place, and actually, as far as the proposed action, the comment periods have concluded. The irrigation districts and Klamath Water Users Association supplied a lot of comments. Unfortunately, what I've read through of the proposed action, none of those comments were utilized or necessarily even considered.
they have a plan and they're going to go with it no matter what the public thinks, right?
It seems to be the case. So, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, when you feel like you're the victim of an agenda, it's probably because you are.
Yeah, it's a conversation we had with Andy Nichols too. Is kind of a common thought process there that they have an agenda of some sort, and regardless of what public opinion or even the good of the public is, they're going to push through with it.
Right.
What can folks do?
So just reach out to your congressman, reach out to your senators. If you want to become more active in the water situation, I mean, the KID meetings are open to the public and patrons. KBID meetings are open to the public and patrons, and you can start participating through those.
Are they posted somewhere, the location?
Yeah, there's
time and date?
yeah. So KID and KBID, as well as the other districts, are all special service districts of Oregon, and so by public meeting law, there has to be at least a 24-hour notice, a public notice of the meetings happening. So
And that's on your guys' website or where?
it should be on the KID website.
Okay.
You can look that up, and then I do believe that, and don't quote me on this, but I do believe the KBID meetings are also posted on the KID website as well.
Okay. I do think, if I recall correctly, Warner Rushke has been kind of a proponent for you guys and been back in Washington.
For sure.
Pushing the issue.
Yeah. No, and all of our representatives of the state nature especially have always been very, very supportive of ag. Our county commissioners have always been very supportive of ag and the water interests of the landowners of the basin as well. And, you know, it kind of draws into the disconnect between state and federal, because the state by rights issued its water rights. There's been legal contests to ask the judicial whose water appropriation should be enforced. And, you know, it kind of should, in my opinion, follow the part of states' rights. Right. You know, you look at Oregon was glad to thumb its nose at the federal government with legalization of marijuana.
And every other drug.
Sanctuary cities and and sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, and exert its states' rights. But when it comes to its absolute right and constitutional right and obligation to appropriate water, the state seemed to just cower to the federal. And so it's really kind of a question of why did they lose their tenacity?
That's always been my argument is we're a constitutional republic, not a democracy like everybody likes to call it.
Exactly.
And so states have rights. They're their own individual entities.
Right.
And,
I don't remember the Pledge of Allegiance saying to the democracy for which it stands.
Exactly. And God, I just cringe every time I watch the news, which is rare anymore, and somebody calls it a democracy. It's like, oh, you guys are misleading everybody every time you say that. But anyway.
Well, how can he be free when the majority rules?
Yeah, exactly.
That's another conversation for another time.
Yeah, now we're all labeled extremists, I'm sure. I was just looking for any other. So the folks in KID and TID are going to, up to 77% of the time, are going to have shortages of water.
Likely.
Yeah.
Is
that A, B, and C, or just the B and C?
That's going to be just A, and B likely will have no water in those situations.
A and B will have none?
B will likely have none.
Oh, okay.
So typically, and don't, I'm just going to throw out round numbers. Tule Lake Irrigation District as a primary contractor, an A contract, along with KID. There's over 100,000 acres of land, and typically, operating wise, you need at least 2 acre feet, because you do have your transmission losses running water down open canals and everything. And so the median value of precipitation, when you take that and put it through essentially the proposed action calculator, it looks like it's going to be somewhere between 160 and 170,000 acre feet of water is all that's going to be available for the project.
Out of 338,000, they're supposed to get.
Well, it should actually be higher than that.
Okay.
But it is not necessarily always the case.
And I know my question was earlier that I couldn't remember. Did the dam removal have anything to do with the flushing all this water this year, or the
Well,
shortages that we're going into?
It's kind of funny because when you look in hindsight, it was anticipated that during dam removal, they couldn't implement the flushing flows, the dilution flows, and all that different kind of stuff. So it should have created an excess water for utilization here. And it's kind of funny how, sometimes stream flows picked up, sometimes they turned down, and there wasn't any necessarily rhyme or reason sometimes for it. So
Okay.
it's kind of created a hardship,
Yeah.
honestly, in my opinion.
And I will leave opinions on whether that was a good thing or a bad thing to the side. And
Fair.
it doesn't matter at this point because they're gone. So,
Well, and there's no gluing them back together now.
no. Outside of that, I was really glad to hear that you wanted to come on here. I appreciate we appreciate that. And I just want to give you a voice, and I don't know if there's anything that we haven't talked about yet that you want to share with the folks that do watch the show as far as what maybe they can do to help you guys out, help the
Right.
farmers out. Because without the farm, we have the base, we have the college, we have the hospital. Agri is still the backbone of the community.
Right.
And we lose that, and we're in trouble, in my opinion.
Right. Well, if I was to add anything else, I'm just going to start soliciting my opinion about a lot of things. I don't think that's necessarily what the goal of Endeavor here was, but I do encourage people to just and do your own research and formulate your own opinions. Participate if you feel that you can make a positive impact. Don't hesitate to participate. I got involved. Man, I've been doing this for about 10 years now. And it is amazing. I'll tell you one thing that's really sad in my opinion is watching the younger generation of agricultural producers wane in the Klamath Basin. It's been a pretty inhospitable environment for making a decision to be a farmer in the Klamath Basin. And I mean, I don't know if we got through that part, but I'm a farmer. My wife and my daughters and myself, we farm a little over 500 acres here in the basin. And I started when I was 14 years old. I got my first lease. It was a whopping 5 acres. But I started building up slowly. My dad told me, he's like, son, if you want to do it, you got to figure out how to do it on your own. And they gave me an opportunity, but for that opportunity, I had to work. And so started developing the farm over years and years and made investments and started putting things together. And we got to where we are now, but it's been a long, hard battle. And situations like the water situation here in the Klamath Basin, you would have to be a very determined young person to jump into agriculture in the Klamath Basin.
I don't know how many times delivering fuel to farms, that's what I used to do, but having this conversation with the current generation running the farm and how their kids want to go to college, they want to go do something else because it's just, they don't know if there's going to be a farm there to work
Right.
in their later years, and it all goes back to me. It's pretty obvious, but I like to eat,
Fair.
and 1 or 2 farms here or there doesn't seem like a whole lot, but as it continues, and it almost seems like it's snowballing, it gets scary. And I really don't have a lot of. We have the corporate farms, the Plymouths and Sierra Cascades, and nothing against those guys. I'm not throwing them under the bus. They're here for a certain period of time and they're gone. They don't sustain our local economy like our local farmers do.
Right. Well, and generically stated across agriculture, you see more mom and pop farms dying out by the day. And, it's like I was watching a different YouTube video and it was talking about now the largest landowner of farmland in the United States is Bill Gates.
Wonder why.
But it creates almost like an agricultural too big to fail. And that's not necessarily the case, because if that system implodes, then we're losing the generational knowledge of agriculture. My wife asked me one time if I thought I'd like to move somewhere else and try to farm somewhere else that's more hospitable to farming. And I told her I would have to start from scratch, because you get to know your growing season, your soil types, your moisture, precipitations, all that different kind of stuff, what you can grow, what you can't grow. And it would be like literally almost starting over in a way. And when you have that institutional knowledge by geographic region and you start dwindling it, I mean, you start to eradicate it, it's not something that you can go pick up a book and read and go, okay, I'm going to go do this. You don't get a diploma for this stuff.
Right.
I mean, I have a high school education is all. So I've learned by the hard knocks, and it's not a fun education.
It's not, but that's knowledge that sticks with you.
For sure.
And I come from so my family farmed down in Patterson, California, and also back in Minnesota. They still have the farm in Minnesota.
Really?
So, but I'm not going to claim to work farm. I lived out in Bonanza and had some goats and chickens. And
Fair.
That's about as far as I
That's
got with it.
still an agricultural pursuit. Welcome to the club.
But I enjoy the that aspect of the lifestyle. And I just appreciate, like I said, I appreciate our farmers.
We appreciate you guys too. Yeah. And like we were talking about before, you know, the retailers and the support of the Klamath Basin farmers, going back to like the economic side of stuff, the revenue that the crops generate here is, you know, that money spent in Klamath Basin, and that starts the circulation of dollars essentially. And the more that you strip that out of our economy, the more you constrict our economy. So.
We are not farmers. Do you think we would be in the same spot? Do you guys have enough outrage or whatever at the meetings from? Do you think it would change anything?
As far as like coming to the meetings and getting mad at your board of representatives,
there's more representation on maybe the feds or
right.
More letters or
yeah. No, by all means, if you're not satisfied, write your congressman letters, write your senators letters, and tell them your dissatisfaction for the way that everything's going. Because when you come to a meeting and everything, pretty much we're going to give you the information as it comes to us through the districts and boards of representatives. We interface with Bureau of Reclamation, with Oregon Water Resources Department, with, in some cases, Fish and Wildlife, in some cases, National Marine Fisheries Service. And so we'll report that information about what's going on to the patrons and to you. Gene Souza, the manager of KID, has done a fantastic job on updating the website, so that, I mean, there's just a lot of information on that. So don't hesitate to look up KID's website and start reading, because there's a lot of stuff going on. And I'm going to forewarn you, it's going to be like drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of moving parts to all of this. And, you know, we could sit here and I could start going through the history of development of the project, and I mean, would be here for hours, if not days.
Well, no, but just the meeting itself, at that point, you're already too late to stand up and say something. You need to write in your congressman.
Well, as far as the current proposed action, before as it's going into effect,
right.
Yeah, you need to write your congressman, write your senators, and make sure that they know that you're very dissatisfied with the way that things are going.
So who's the driving force for the reclamation project? And is that a local person? Is that somebody in D.C.? The people that are promoting the Endangered Species
Right.
Act? And that?
So Bureau of Reclamation has their local area office, and then they have a regional office, and then you have pretty much the bigwigs in Washington, D.C. And so, you know, it was designed that the local area office is supposed to have the most control, but it kind of, from what we've seen of actions and maybe a little bit of feedback from some of the area employees, that there's a lot of decisions that are being made outside of the Klamath Basin that directly affect the Klamath Basin.
Is there any opportunity or is it worthwhile for folks to contact them with how they feel about the way things are going?
You can, and whether that's going to have a necessary positive effect, I don't know. But that's everybody has their First Amendment right, and you go ahead and share with whoever you feel that you need to share with your opinion. And that's one thing that my grandfather said, is that you have the right to your opinion, but I don't necessarily have the right to have to hear it.
Right.
So.
Or agree with it.
Yeah. So you can definitely reach out to the area office, and just the biggest thing is to be civil about your approach. A lot of people that the people that work at the area office are part of our home and community as well. The majority of them that I've been around really are also concerned about agricultural and the basin. And unfortunately, sometimes they have to take their marching orders from on high and implement things that they know are going to be adversarial to their community. And I don't envy their position at all.
All right.
So,
On a side note, did you want to get into that?
we on a side note, we definitely can, if you would like.
Well, it's your gig. You might as well explain what's going on here.
Okay. So, for those who don't know, my brother and I built Skyline Brewing Company back in 2018. My brother is the genius behind the beers of Skyline.
He does a good job.
He does a very good job. My brother has a very, we'll say, biologically gifted mind. When he loves cattle, and so cows are his forte. He's the quote unquote rancher. I'm more the farmer. He's into cows. I'm into plows, kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And so
That's a great way to put it. I've had people ask me what's the difference between a farmer and a rancher, and I'll remember that cows and plows.
Cows and plows. So at the same point in time that my brother was getting into hobby brewing, I was getting into hobby distilling, even though I wasn't getting into distilling. But started playing around with that, and started making a couple different recipes and trying different things, maybe changing up the way that stills work and all that kind of stuff. And over the last, it's been about 12, 13 years now, we actually designed and developed a pretty unique distillation process. And so it's designed to be a neutral spirit still. At some point in time, maybe we'll have to do like an on-site tour if we ever get the distillery up and going. And you guys can come out and check it out.
If you have more of that, I'll show up. That's smooth.
So this is a rye. And so this is made from rye that we raised on farm. And did the malting process, mashed it, fermented, distilled it, aged it. This is actually force aged, because I'm a very impatient person, and so
Yours takes forever to go by.
exactly. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with force aging spirits. It's not about how much spirit you put in your oak; it's about how much oak you put in your spirit.
Right.
And so you can
Some staves to
you can control your char, your roast, and your toast of your oak going into it. And what usually would take 4 or 5 years to do, you can actually do in 4 or 5 days.
Oh, really?
So yeah, this actually I over oaked it because of my impatience, and this was actually aged out in 24 hours.
Wow.
So
I'm not going to lie, it does have a little bit of that new make on the nose, that fresh, almost shine-like smell. Mm-hmm. But then you take a sip, and that rye and the flavor, almost the smokiness comes through. Yeah.
No. And so most of your rye whiskeys are based on like an eastern rye berry. And so this is actually dry land rye that we raise here local. And so the thing about, cereal grains is when they're stressed, essentially deprived of water, is going to create a lot of stress. So when it started getting really hot was when the kernels were trying to fill out, and the plants were really stressed. Instead of setting on starches, they'll actually convert that and set on proteins. And so when we mash this in, the liquid was just really thick, and it was those proteins that were setting up in there. But it didn't have a great yield because it was low on carbohydrate essentially, but it did make it pretty approachable. It's not that bold spicy of a typical rye that I've found, but it created a very nice mellow drink.
Yeah. Do you know where it proofs out at?
This is running right about 90 proof.
90. That's smooth for 90.
That is good.
Yeah.
There is no bite at all. Well done, sir.
Oh, thank you. We do our best.
So I do enjoy wherever the camera is. Skyline's beer. Got their glasses here.
Fair enough.
I'm looking forward to the whiskey coming out.
Well,
I know it's a bit of a process again with the government.
oh yeah.
All that taken care of, but
Yeah, we've been going through trying to get through the building permit side of stuff, and there's since we're kind of unique and novel, we're trying to build a distillery on farm, and that's kind of what we want to do is grow everything on farm, do the processing on farm, and kind of showcase what ag processing can entail. But still, at that, you're making a volatile vapor. And so that's where the concern starts to grow about fire safety and a requirement for fire sprinklers and all that kind of stuff, which creates kind of a hardship on farm. Most of your farm shops don't have fire safety equipment like that. And so we're working with the county to try to figure out, the difference between what is commercial and what's private, because, would like to be open to the public, but our big thing is we just want to make it. Right. And so, whether we utilize tasting rooms, and whatever to showcase our product, that's still yet to be determined, but ultimately would like to get this thing up and going.
Yeah. I don't know. Are you familiar with Frey Ranch in Nevada?
I've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah, they're the same idea. They had a farm. They decided they wanted to do some whiskey, and they've been around for 10 years or so now, I think it is. But yeah, good stuff also.
For sure.
But same thought process.
Fair enough. So, what else are you guys connoisseurs of?
Oh,
I'm turning the tables. I'm starting to ask questions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely bourbon. I do touch on Scotch once in a while.
You like the big heavy peaties, or
Not really.
just the nice mellow smooth?
Yeah.
A little bit of the earthy to it.
Glenmorangie.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah, it's actually up there on the shelf.
Oh yeah.
My Ardbeg is in the house still, and I don't know if you've ever had Ardbeg. It's called. They've got one called an Oogdal.
Oh really?
No,
I've never had that.
It smells like a campfire. Yeah, a combination of a campfire and an ashtray. And I'm the nice guy that brought it to a bourbon tasting with a bunch of friends. Said, "Here, try this." And yeah, I wasn't real popular that night.
Well, you got to try at least once, right?
Yeah. You don't know. There was one of the ladies that was there actually liked it. I'm starting to find a lot of women like scotches more than men do.
Right.
And
it's funny how it even goes to like beer, the different flavors that certain people like and don't like, because you have people who hate IPAs, love lagers, but at the same point in time, like the raspberry wheat has been very popular amongst all crowds. And so it just depends on the different taste and nuance that people look for, and sophisticated tastes come from the strangest places too. So
that's true.
And that's one thing I am definitely not as sophisticated. Here. Oh, now I am.
Right.
When in doubt, pinky out.
Yeah, the pinky.
So, how about you, Dave? What do you like for spirit?
We're both bourbon. I'd have to say I'm more of a Russell, Jack single barrel. I'm more of the sweet. Could have a little bit of bite, but I definitely like a sweet background to it. I think that's where we kind of differ.
Yeah, well, and you're getting me back in the ryes because I was never a real big rye fan, and you kind of turned me on that. Stag is my favorite, and
That's a good handle.
I don't care what bottle I've had of any other. Stag is still it's going to take something really special to knock a bottle of Stag off the top of my list.
That's
so.
fair.
But I got some stuff. I'll bring it out after we're done here. But it's Bourbon County, and I got it in Kentucky, and it's a small little craft distiller back there, and man, it's candy corn all day long. It's really good. So we'll have to try that in a little
Fair.
here. But I just want to again thank you for coming out.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
You
I
have
appreciate
an
it.
open forum. Anytime you want to come on
Fair
here,
enough.
if there's anything going on with water that we don't have the largest audience yet, but we're working on it.
Right.
We're growing.
You are growing. I saw that over your the videos that you guys are perpetually getting more and more subscribers. And I will say for you, smash that subscribe button.
you.
Like these guys, and honestly, anytime you have any questions when it comes to if you think that I'm capable of answering on water, on agriculture, on things going on in the basin, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to come and share with you guys and be a part of any conversation you want me to be a part of.
I appreciate that. And like I said, it's an open forum. Even if you can't make it, if you want to forward the information to us, we'll get it
sure.
out there for you.
For sure.
It's an open forum for anybody in the public.
Right.
We've had Andy on a couple of times. We've extended invitations to other people that are running for office. Haven't had anybody take us up yet, but who knows? We keep
Apparently, you
throwing.
just got to call their name and they come.
Well, I'll just throw them out there with a phone number and see what happens. No, I do. I apologize.
Oh,
for that.
no, it's fine. It's
But
fine.
The long term, I guess the flip side of that is I'm glad it got your attention. I'm glad it's here. We could clear things up and you could explain to folks a little bit
sure.
better what's going on. Because I don't think a lot of people really understand how important this is to our community, and it really is.
Right. Well, and as far as the all intents and purposes, I'm not used to having my name come up without me being there, and
Right.
so it kind of that's what it more caught me off guard. When I got an email going, "Hey, you were mentioned on such and such," and it's like, I was. So, but it was really nice that we could get together and kind of go through that. And I'll remind your viewers again too, if you have a desire to start picking up information, Klamath Water Users Association has their website, KID has their website, and there's a treasure trove of information on there as far as getting more familiar with how things came to be and potentially where things are going.
But I think that I appreciate you coming on as well. I just think that we are we're not afraid to bring up what's going on. It may not be the best subject, and we really can't blame you in this matter. You did clear a lot of stuff up, but we are going to do that. So if it is a bad situation, you want to come on here and explain or tell us what's going on, we'd much rather have you on here than just read
yeah,
the
sure.
story. And so thank you.
We kind of don't mind and in some aspects enjoy poking the bear.
Right.
But the flip side of that is that's usually how you get resolution to things
Right.
too. So
Well, and I mean the letter caused a lot of kind of questions and I'm not going to necessarily say controversy, but KID fielded a lot of phone calls about that letter, and in one part it's bad that it was not like I said, my penning of paper is not exactly apparently the most clear and concise, but at least it did bring awareness more to the situation that people are starting to get engaged and understand what the liabilities of the future look like. So, hopefully, the biggest thing about dialogue is it's not always comfortable,
Right.
but it's how you come to solutions. And so that's the biggest part is just start having the conversation again. And same thing that you guys probably go through on other fronts too, is somebody's got to say the first word. And then you can start having a conversation and start finding resolution to problems.
and that we'll wrap up on this, I guess. But it brings up a point of something I meant to bring up earlier. Is I understand the tribes and the irrigation districts, and there's like a group of local folks that are working on a solution that'll keep all of them happy. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, or
I mean,
trying to come to terms of agreement.
there's been a lot of attempts at collaborative solutions. It seems like, though, no matter how many times you try to collaborate, whether it's on habitat restoration, water allocations, and all the different kind of stuff, everybody always ends up going back to their camp and, taking their ball and going home. And so it's really frustrating sometimes that we can't try to move forward together. I mean, we're all going to have to make concessions. You look at one point in time, the Klamath project diverted upwards of 500,000 acre feet of water. I mean, this is a long time ago, and everything was working fine. And then we get to the point that like after 2001, there was a bunch of efficiency measures that started taking place. You had, for water conservation, you had like the EQIP programs for paying for pressurized irrigation, getting away from surface or flood irrigation. And there was a bunch of things that were done. The last full allocation year that we had was 2019. And instead of, over 500,000 acre feet, or the average, I think, was 485,000. In 2019, the project only diverted 327,000.
Wow.
And so there's been a lot of progress made as far as trying to ratchet down how much water the project consumes. But if in the end, we don't get credit for the actions that we've already taken, it's kind of like, well, what more can we give? And one of the most frustrating things I'll share with you guys too is when you hear people, government officials, talking about water right retirement. And it's really difficult as a landowner and as an agricultural producer to think about people making concessions of their private property rights in lieu of somebody else's wants and desires. And it kind of creates a hard spot for me when you go in to talk about, collaborative efforts and everything, and everybody's always saying, well, water right retirement. How do you appropriate that water right retirement amongst the basin?
Right.
How do you equitably apportion that? And so when you go to collaborate, you hope that everybody puts their best foot forward and has everybody's concern in mind and everybody's well-being in mind.
So far, that hasn't happened, it seems.
It seems like it's been a tug of war. Yeah. It seems like there's been progress made and then progress lost. And, the pendulum swings of the politics of it don't help at all. And so, I mean, you guys, you see that in every part of the world. It doesn't help. So
it just seems like there's power in numbers, and if people could actually come to a concession where they could work together as a solid front, it would sure behoove everybody for that to happen, instead of having particular interests going back and not. I could not imagine giving up or retiring, like as you say, water rights. No,
right.
No, that wasn't the deal.
No. Well, and you look back at the design of reclamation. The Reclamation Act of 1902 is what started this whole thing moving forward. And even as late as like the 1960s, there were talks about why it was a good move to invest in reclamation. And reclamation defined as reclaiming wetlands into arable farmland. That is reclamation. And so it's funny how you go from the 1960s, even like JFK, when he stood at the Whiskeytown pumps after they were completed on the Klamath River, he said, finally today we stop wasting water. And we just ripped out a bunch of infrastructure on the river. And so it's funny how the social narrative changes over time. And, that's one of the difficulties of moving forward collaboratively, is you never know where the social mentality is going to go next too. Sure. So it's hard.
I don't think some people wake up till they're hungry.
And which is usually too late.
Yep.
So.
Well, do you have anything else?
No, this was your story, man. You're right.
Yeah, but I just want to again thank you for coming on and for tolerating my my message to everybody a couple weeks ago about here's the name and here's the number, give them a call. you know, I probably could have been a little bit more discreet or used a little more discretion in how I approached that. But I'm grateful for your patience with me and us and coming on. And like I say, you've got an open forum here anytime you'd like to use it.
Muchly appreciated.
Hey, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right, you
Thanks,
bet.
Dave.
Yeah, thanks.
And thanks, folks. And we'll have our regularly scheduled program out on Tuesday. So we'll see you then. Thank you.